So starting with, let's see, the first question is, how is detecting an anomaly estimating whether or when maintenance is needed for the machine? It seems more as a reactive approach with root cause analysis. So I'll open that up to anyone who wants to field that one. John.
Yeah, so usually anomaly detection does not by itself provide, let's say, the neither diagnostics nor the plan for maintenance. So it's primarily as we see it as a early warning tool that tells you there is something going on that is worthy of checking. And usually that means that then someone needs to go and check either on a if you have a good remote dashboard with insight with the relevant sensor data and operational data, you can maybe use that to evaluate like triage. Or maybe you need to go and do a physical inspection in order to determine what is going on. Is there a cause for concern? Is it an immediate or a scheduled action that needs to be done, or maybe nothing at all?
If I can add something, I agree with John. So, anomaly detection for me, it's one of the first stage to reach predictive maintenance solution. So, detect anomaly, it's basic, as John said. Then I focus on presentation about anomaly detection, but we can also create some classification and some regression algorithm. The regression algorithm will help, for example, to say, okay, I know this anomaly. The last time I saw this anomaly, the equipment failed, I don't know, a few days after. So you should plan something before this date, because we know that this kind of anomaly creates this kind of fault. So the thing is, the anomaly detection is one of the first stage, but then thanks to this solid basis, I would like to say, we can build with other advanced models something more which will give more meaningful and more advanced information.
Great. Okay. Yeah, the thing I would add is that it could in fact end up being reactive. It's a function of what the threshold values you set and how you define what anomaly is. It's a constant balance between making it so sensitive that virtually everything ends up triggering a false positive, which becomes equally counterproductive. So it's striking the right balance, and then over time, as you learn more and can label that data, then the model gets more intelligent over time. Next question is the first principal approaches to extending the intrinsic computation sensing for the application to include maintenance monitoring prediction is disruptive. Chris, can you summarize this approach to other approaches outlined using incremental resources, and if those approaches couldn't be refactored to use a first principle intrinsic approach? I think the answer to that is kind of what we've described is, initially when you don't have a large set of data, you would use more of these unsupervised approaches first. As we collect data and gather more insight, you have train and test data sufficient for building more intrinsic computation and models that can be applied accordingly. Okay, we have one directed to Jan. The question was, did I understand correctly that the model built by ourselves with microchip solution is then optimized for a hardware we specify?
Yes, it will. You can, yes, absolutely.
Let's see, next, this one was directed at Juan. It says, in unsupervised, self-supervised, and pre-trained block in your block diagram, what does it do? So I think we have to reference a slide.
Sure.
Your block diagram.
Yeah, I think there. I saw several questions related to this notion of unsupervised and self-supervised learning that the ARAD model used. So I guess I'll just clarify a bit. So the unsupervised learning is a quite broad terms that just refers to learning from unlabeled data, right? And this self-supervised learning is a class of method that belongs to unsupervised learning, but the goal is typically to learn a generalized representation of the data that can be later adapt to different downstream tasks, including anomaly detection, right? And so, and to do so, typically we would construct some supervised tasks from the data itself, and that's why we call it self-supervised learning. And there are several different methods that all belongs to the self-learning approach. So, for example, we could train the model to reconstruct a sentence, an image, or a time series, or we can train the model to map to similar or relevant sequence or sentences into the same representation. And so these are all different methods. And there are also many smaller details. So for example, what data augmentation you use. And all of these, the choice of specific self-supervised learning method, the data augmentation would have a big impact on the quality and the characteristics of the representation. And so for anomaly detection specifically, we've experimented with these different methods for both the time series data, vision data, and the audio data. The different methods really results in very different results. So we've done a lot of experiment and choose the one that worked the best across the data sets.
Great. Okay. Juan, we've got another question for you, which was, could you recommend on what specific kinds of unsupervised, self-supervised learning techniques would be suitable for tinyML?
Yeah, I think, it is a similar question as a previous one. Probably already covered it. Yeah.
Okay. We'll move to one that was for Pierrick, which was for the on-device learning feature of the ST NanoEdge AI Studio. How do we get good labeled data in the field?
Thanks for the question. So actually, I don't know if Pierre want to support me on that, but the thing is the on-device learning is aimed to teach the model what is the normality. So that means that it should be launched after maintenance, for example, or the setup of the equipment or something, when we are quite, let's say, we are quite confident on the fact that the equipment is running on the proper manner. So then we will learn what is the standard, what is okay for after maintenance or something, for like few days, few weeks. It depends on the application. And then we can switch from learning to monitoring to start detecting anomalies with the same model on the same MCU. So quick answer is we need to start the learning phase during the let's say after a setup of the equipment or after maintenance to be sure that it's normal condition.
Yeah. To complete with the Bob Assistant product, exactly as I said, Pierrick, of course you have to install Bob Assistant when you are sure about the status of the engine that you want to monitor. So typically, not necessary on a new equipment, but it could be just after a maintenance. You have to be sure about the health status of the product. Or otherwise, if you have any doubt, you think that maybe there is an issue with this engine, it could be a good idea to use the Bob Assistant device. So it's not true, because if you have any doubt, the device will probably learn a nominal signature or vibration, and it will learn this signature or vibration with an existing doubt, with an existing issue. So after the calculation of the drift will not be right, and you will not be alarmed about the drift. So yes.
Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you. Okay, the next question was directed at John. John, so for your HVAC monitoring solution and anomaly detection, have you scaled the solution? And if so, what are the challenges you experienced?
Yeah, we are currently monitoring around or over 1,000 components in close to 100 buildings across Scandinavia. So, which we have scaled mostly in the last year, but some over 2 years. There's a range of experience in doing that, of course. We were initially worried about Bluetooth signal strength and 4G signal strength, especially because some things are in basements, stuff like that. That's been quite manageable in practice, at least here in Scandinavia. But it's yeah, you need good processes for your installation and then quality assurance and doing a bit of follow-up. User onboarding, even though things are designed to be very easy for users, it's very important to just have to go through how the system works, make sure to clear up any questions they have very early, so you don't get like misunderstandings or a lot of support requests unnecessarily afterwards. And it's a continuous process when you do such rollouts. You kind of you improve some things on the like processes, and then you go to more, and then you learn more and more. And now we're expanding out in Europe. I'm sure there will be many more lessons.
Great. Thanks, John. So I'll open up some of those similar questions I had asked Max in the upfront section, and starting with what market segments do we believe that are embracing tinyML most aggressively currently, and what can we learn from their adoption that can extend into other use cases and applications? So I just can't float that question out there. If somebody has some thoughts, please share. And
I'll take a stab at it, Chris. I think from our side, we're seeing a lot of uptake in industrial motors and machinery in the factory space, or as some other presenters showed, like in pumps, in motors and larger setups. But sometimes that incentive around tinyML is not as obvious because these are established deployments where there is an availability of potentially power and compute capacity. But in sort of more remote and more difficult settings, you do want to collect data and draw inference on that individual device. So we're seeing deployments like that across the board, picking up and being embraced more. So I'd say very industrial and factory setting is where we're seeing a lot of uptake on our side.
Okay, great. Anyone have anything to add to that?
No, I think it was, sorry, this is Jan. Yeah, about the same thing, but it goes to many places that sometimes which are, could be very surprising, but it's everywhere. Everybody's trying to improve what they're doing in some way, so.
Yeah, it's sensible. I think we've seen a broad variety of use cases, some in some very niche areas with very specific problems they're trying to solve that are very critical to them, not necessarily scale out to other customers at large, other than the general process for the methods used. So,
yeah, Chris, if I could just add on there, I agree with everybody else. We're mostly seeing industrial applications, some sort of shipping and warehouse equipment, but it's similar. It's still equipment in some kind of a line, right, that you're trying to monitor and ensure good quality. And I really think a lot of the drivers is sort of what Michael mentioned, but others just mentioned as well, that like this drive to zero defects, drive to continuously improve quality. Sometimes that needs more data. And when you start talking about, even if you've got a installation site that has power and Wi-Fi network or a gateway available, if you're going to start pumping thousands of data sample points per minute, or really more per second, tens of thousands per minute across multiple machines and factory lines, IT clouds don't want to deal with that, and factory networks don't want to deal with that stuff. So, in some ways, the motivation for tinyML ends up being a data reduction. Have that intelligence at the edge, so you can just send a sample up per second, per minute, and then do higher level analytics at that point. But similar kind of area and use cases beyond that.
Yeah, good points, Elias. It's a data deluge, and we could be awash in that kind of data without a distributed approach that involves the edge. So good to raise that point. Okay, well, hey, we're at the top of our 2.5 hour block. I want to thank everyone for joining. Thank all our panelists here for their contributions and insights. Thank all our sponsors within the tinyML Foundation for making this possible. And to thank all of you who registered and attended. Again, thanks everyone for attending, and hope you found this valuable. And take care.